You're listening to the Behind the Scenes Podcast Diary, episode number 10. Welcome to Amelia's Behind the Scenes Podcast Diary, an exclusive look at the behind-the-scenes misadventures of a 30-something thriller writer. Discover how close she is to releasing her latest novel, hear exciting details about upcoming writing projects, and discover the lessons she has learned along her writing journey so you don't have to make the same mistakes. You can find the episode show notes and lots more information at ameliahay.com/podcast/BTS. Hello writers, I'm back from another podcasting hiatus. I've been thinking about whether I should restart my podcast at the beginning of January in 2019, and then I thought, why am I putting it off? I should just start now. Now is always a great time to start something. So this is why you're getting an episode today after my last episode, which was in possibly, I'm thinking September or July. I'm not 100% sure, but you get it. It's been a long time if you've been following the podcast. But if you've discovered my podcast today, you're thinking, what hiatus? And this doesn't make any sense for you. I have a few announcements, both personal and writing related, that I can't wait to share with you. I also want to discuss a few changes to the podcast and how I plan on structuring these episodes. Going forward, I aim to be more transparent about the changes to the podcast and any reasons for long sabbaticals. Without further ado, let's get started. As I looked back over the previous episodes of my Behind the Scenes Podcast Diary, I've realised that I never highlighted the format that you can expect from this show. Now that I've reached the 10th episode, I found a format or flow for the diary that seems to work really well for me. I aim to start with a quick personal update that should last for no longer than 1 minute. After this, I will share a writing-related update followed by the main content, which is a lesson I've learnt along my writing journey during the past few weeks or months. All of the segments of the show should not extend beyond about 15 minutes, and the bulk of the time will be spent sharing the lessons I've learned. So I won't just be sort of waffling on about what I'm doing. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Some people really like a really chatty format podcast, but I like to chat. I tend to ramble. So this is why a lot of my episodes sound scripted, is I want to stick to the main content and not steer off to some, random tangent that isn't beneficial for you, because that's why I create this podcast. I don't create the podcast just to talk about myself. I create it for you and I want it to be beneficial for you. So that's why I script things. So I want to stay on topic. And I've just gone on another tangent. This is why I script things. When Roland and I first moved in, I never stopped to consider the noise from the traffic along the busy road that's outside our apartment and how it would affect my podcast recordings. I really do remember the first time that I stepped into this apartment. I really loved it. It was so much more room than our tiny one-bedroom apartment, which was really Roland's bachelor pad, but I moved in and ruined that for him. I distinctly remember walking through this, really falling in love with the apartment, and it's like I had a brain dead moment. I didn't consider the several lanes of traffic outside and just the amount of noise that picks up through my microphone. And at the same time that I moved, I was using a microphone and I purchased another microphone, and basically this microphone lets all the noise in. Even though I can control the direction the microphone picks up the noise, it still picks up noise from the road, and I can hear it in the podcast recordings, and I can't listen to those episodes that I can hear the traffic. It just annoys me that much. And I'm actually considering going back and actually re-recording them, which sounds a bit bizarre, but I think that's just my perfectionist nature. So since that fateful day, there have been an extreme number of roadworks, both planned and emergency, as well as some type of renovations going on in the background. All of this noise seeps into the recording of my podcast, and in turn has resulted in more time spent editing my podcast. And the thing with audio recordings is the more you do to the recording, the more it sounds ridiculous. And it gets to the point where you're like, like, is this actually worth me spending time? At one stage I was considering, am I going to have to go to a studio because that's super expensive? I've purchased new equipment and tried out other rooms in the house, but what I've tried hasn't worked up until this recording. So all of the roadworks has resulted in me having to wait until the roadworks are finished in order to record another episode. I've been a little hesitant to discuss this with you because it sounds like I'm listing a whole heap of excuses to disguise my laziness. And that's what it sounds like, but this is just what my life has been like at the moment. A few days before Roland and I left on a 5-day trip to Florence, I decided to try recording in the bathroom just as a super desperate last attempt before I started looking for recording studios and sort of trying to figure out how I was going to pay for that and continue podcasting and all of that drama. The bathroom is located at the back right-hand corner of the apartment and is closer to the center of the main building. Our apartment is in a building that was renovated and turned into a group of flats. The apartment we chose has a cute little veranda that faces a busy road. But back to the bathroom. I set up the recording equipment and shut the door and recorded it, and guess what? No noise from the traffic seeped into the test recording. I couldn't believe it. I was just like, how have I not considered this? The only problem is I have a slight echo, but it doesn't distract from the listening experience. Like, I've played it over so many times and I thought maybe this is okay, and then I've shared the test with a few other people and they said, well, I've actually listened to other podcasts that have actually a more prominent echo than mine, and I thought, oh, maybe this isn't too bad. So yes, I'm recording this episode from my bathroom. There's a part of me that's struggling with the concept of recording in my bathroom, but it means less editing time and no traffic to filter out. If you've listened to the previous episodes, you will know that it's not actually possible to filter out the traffic. For those of you who are super curious about my new podcast setup, because it does sound a bit ridiculous, I have actually shared a photo of it on my Instagram account for the podcast. It's the handle for the Instagram account is Indie Author Pod. And so yes, right now I'm standing with my Blue Yeti microphone in my bathroom, sipping at a cup of peppermint tea between the segments of the podcast. I think it's a bit weird, a bit quirky, but yeah, so I'm a bit quirky, so that makes sense. After much deliberation, I've decided on the recording schedule for this podcast based on feedback from the 9th episode of the Behind the Scenes podcast diary. There will be 2 diary episodes per month and 2 episodes on writing craft until the end of season 1. After the end of season 1, I will be releasing weekly Behind the Scenes podcast diary episodes until the start of season 2. I wanted to have a break between season 1 and season 2 so I can sort of get ahead of the recording schedule so I don't fall behind. So if something happens where I can't record, I've still got like a backlog of episodes so I don't repeat the mistakes of the past. I hope all of that makes sense for you. The podcast episodes will be released every week on Thursday at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. At the time of this recording, I've finished writing the first draft of Missing and I'm having a break before diving into revisions. I officially finished writing on the 2nd of November, so it's been almost a month. I want to make sure that I get some distance between me and my work. I'm a little over my word count goal for Missing at 33,135 words. This increase in my total word count means I've written 6,562 extra words since the last podcast diary update. During this time, I've made line edits to the second draft of the novella and submitted the scenes to my alpha reader. These edits have brought the total word count from 6,562 to 6,221 extra words since episode 9. I'm now waiting on my alpha reader to read the revised first draft and to send me notes. My revision plans have been put on hold because I want to include the feedback from my alpha reader in my revision. revisions. I'm essentially treating my alpha reader as a light developmental edit. There are a few story elements missing that I'm not entirely happy with as a writer that relate to the level of realism in the story, and I'm interested in finding out whether my first reader feels the same way. I guess this is a way of checking whether realism is a problem in the story or if I'm overanalyzing and obsessing over missing, because it's not the first time I've obsessed over a story, and I need to sort of check, is this real? Is this really a problem, or is it just me? Over the last few weeks, I've received notifications and advertisements on Goodreads asking me to link my Amazon account, and over the weekend I took the plunge. Basically, the linking or syncing feature allows you to add books that you've purchased through Amazon to your Goodreads want to read list. I like to keep my TBR books on my Kindle in a collection, and there's a nerdy part of me that loves this new level of organization on Goodreads. There was one thing I didn't expect when I activated this feature, and that was the notes and the highlights made within the books on my Kindle have been imported into Goodreads. So hopefully this feature will make book reviews a little easier. I'll include a picture of this in the show notes over on my blog. While we're discussing things related to reading, about a month ago I finished reading Absolute Proof by Peter James. Absolute Proof is the first novel written by Peter James that I've read. I know he has a whole heap of other things, but this particular book really grabbed my attention because the cover was, it's red and it's got gold embossing on it, and it's just simply beautiful. And spoiler alert, I loved it. Sorry, the story ticks all the right boxes for me. It's about an investigative journalist who is investigating a religious conspiracy theory. In thrillers, I tend to love a story that doesn't feature spies or ex-military types of protagonists. I've always found the world of investigative journalism quite intriguing, which is probably why I've created a series based on a protagonist who is a investigative journalist. The novel was hard to put down. It was becoming a problem because I was planning on starting revising Missing in December, but I ended up putting it off. So panic about not being able to put the book down suddenly became irrelevant when I realized that I gave my alpha reader a too short for time span to read and give me feedback. So I highly recommend Absolute Proof if you like novels by Dan Brown, James Rollins, or J.F. Penn, if you like that sort of religious conspiracy theory with an intelligent protagonist who investigates something. I hope you enjoyed this update style podcast diary. Have you tried out the Connecting Amazon and Goodreads feature? What do you think? Do you love it or hate it? Let me know by coming over to the blog post and sharing your experience in the comments section. Thank you for listening, and happy reading and writing, everybody. Thank you for listening to Amelia's Behind the Scenes podcast diary. If you're new to this podcast or want to be notified about more episodes just like this, then click the subscribe button right now. I'm your host Amelia, and I'll see you next week for another diary episode.